Hello and welcome to Digital Marketing Masterclass. My name is Chris Carr, the founder and president of Faratech, and today we have a very special show. We are talking about AI and marketing, and we have an incredible guest. But as always, my co-host, Todd Smith, is here. In preparation for this, I got the smartest guy on my team. His name's Roy. He's an incredible writer. And he knows a ton about AI, and he was busy, and so I chose Todd, the VP of Partner Growth, who enjoys pickleball and Star Wars Legos.
And golf.
Yeah. Yep. So Todd, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. This is going to be fun. I'm excited about this topic, and I cannot, I've read a lot. I've seen some of his keynotes, and I cannot wait to, I can't wait to hear something I haven't heard yet. So
no pressure,
no pressure, Paul. But looking forward.
It's Friday, man. Just take it easy on me.
And so let me dive into this. Paul's background. Paul Roetzer is the founder and CEO of PR 2020 and Marketing Artificial Intelligence Institute, the author of the Marketing Performance Blueprint and the Marketing Agency Blueprint. He's the creator of the Marketing Artificial Intelligence Conference called MACON and the AI Academy for Marketers. As a speaker, Roetzer is focused on marketing artificial intelligence being approachable and actionable, helping change agents drive transformation through marketing talent, technology, and strategy. He's a graduate of Ohio University's E.W. Scribbs School of Journalism and has consulted hundreds of organizations from startups to Fortune 500 companies. And what I recently learned is he has his own conference room named after him at HubSpot. Let's talk about that HubSpot one first. What happened there?
So, as people may be aware, PR 2020 was HubSpot's first partner agency. So I started the agency in November of 2005, and in late 2007, when HubSpot was about a year old, we started looking at their software for our agency. I was just curious what they offered. And we were so early in HubSpot that Brian Halligan, one of the co-founders, was actually on one of our sales calls.
Oh my
God. So he was still doing calls at the time. So we signed on mainly for the access to the training to teach my team new rules of marketing kind of stuff. And then in 2008, we started reselling HubSpot software before they had a partner program or even really plans to have a partner program. And it just kind of grew from there. And, I wrote this blog post called Dawn of the Inbound Marketing Agency, which became the origin of the entire inbound marketing agency ecosystem, and HubSpot sort of like a rallying cry within HubSpot. And so, when just unbeknownst to me, they created a conference room for me. And it was funny because it had actually been there, I think, for 6 months or a year maybe. And then one of my buddies texted me one time. He's like, "Do you know we have a conference room named after you here?" And I was like, "No, man, nobody told me that." So I was in Boston visiting, and it was right in the center of their main lounge. It was me, Benioff, and David Meerman Scott, I think, were the original 3 conference rooms in the thing.
Wow.
And years passed, it's gotten moved around. But the funny part that I didn't tell you guys about is, so my last name is actually pronounced Roetzer. Nobody knows that, and I never correct anyone. So you're cool. That's all right. So after my conference room has existed for 7-8 years at HubSpot, I'm at Inbound speaking, and somebody comes up to me and asks how to pronounce my name to introduce me on stage. And I said, "Well, it's Roetzer." And they're like, "No, it's not. It's Roetzer. We have the Roetzer room at HubSpot." And I said, "No, it's actually Roetzer. I just don't correct people." And so that night at the bar, I had dozens of HubSpotters coming out to me saying, "How in the hell is your name Roetzer? It makes no sense. It's the Roetzer room." So I think it's still the Roetzer room. But
that's really funny.
There you go.
That's really funny. I had a buddy of mine who got married. I've known him for 10 years, and his name is Brian Denstadt. And when he's getting married, the pastor kept calling him Brian Denstead. And after the service, I was like, "Hey, do you want to give the pastor a little heads up on how to say your name?" He's like, "Oh, no, that's how you say my name." I was like, "In 10 years, you never corrected me? Are you kidding me?" I'm vacationing with you. I'm doing something. At no point, he's like, "I never got around to it." I was like, "Man, we are very different people."
That's really funny.
So we were joking around in the lead up to the show, how do you have any time? you do a ton of stuff, So you sold PR 2020, and the newest endeavor is, what's the newest endeavor?
Marketing Artificial Intelligence Institute, which is an offspring of PR 2020. Right. I mean, the origin story there was we started it as a blog under PR 2020 in 2016 to tell the story of AI, like figure it out for ourselves. What is it? How do you use it? Yep. And then in 2019, I spun it off into its own company. And so I was founder, CEO of both, raised $1 million seed round for the Institute as like a media and event company. And then this past year kind of got to be like, wow, this is really hard to run both companies, and opportunity presented itself to sell PR 2020, but stay involved as the CEO, kind of overseeing large scale vision strategy stuff and still working with my team. So it made sense to put more brain power to the artificial intelligence thing, because I feel like we're just at the beginning stages of that.
Yeah.
Well, that's really funny because some of the like keynotes that I've seen were probably from 4 or 5 years ago. And you were saying the same thing. You feel like we're kind of at the beginning of this. So Chris and I obviously were involved on the agency side. Like we're an agency ourselves, just like PR 2020 was, and probably in some respects. But a lot of what we want to talk about today is because we are at the forefront of AI. I think the biggest thing we need to do before we go too far is just sort of demystify AI for us. And I think what's interesting is, the general public has an idea of what AI is from the IBM Watson commercials and the stuff they see in between the football games. But words like machine learning, algorithm, how do they all sort of play together? Can you just sort of break that down for us, just so our audience knows when we talk about AI, we're talking specifically about this?
Yeah, for sure. You're 100% right. I mean, the perception is either maybe if you pay attention to the Microsoft ads or IBM or stuff like that, you get some clue. But most people, it's actually sci-fi stuff from Hollywood. So they think like Ex Machina and Matrix and stuff like that. And it's so far from what AI is today. What that is what would be called general intelligence. It's machines that can think and act like humans and achieve multiple goals and be sentient, and that doesn't exist. So artificial intelligence, at the simplest form, what I always tell people is you've used it dozens of times today already. When you talk to Siri or Alexa, the machine being able to understand what you say and respond back to you, that's language understanding and generation. When Netflix recommends shows to you, it's actually using a recommender algorithm that's trying to predict what you would watch next. Spotify does the same thing with music. Google Maps does it with routing you to destinations, trying to make predictions about outcomes or behaviors. Gmail, when it finishes your sentences for you. These are all forms of artificial intelligence that are infused in our lives. And so at a very high level, what it is it's the science of making machines, like hardware and software, smart.
Gotcha. And
what I mean by that is that definition comes from Demystifying, who's the founder of DeepMind, which is a Google company subsidiary. And the reason I love it is because if you think about your job as a marketer, agency professional, whatever you're doing, if you're using, say, email marketing software, you write all the rules to tell the email software what to do. So some programmer wrote code that enables it to do a thing, and then you say what list to send it to, when to send it, what headline to use, what copy to use, what CTA. All these things are choices you're making. And you're trying to, you don't think about it this way, but you're trying to predict what is going to get another human to take an action. So at its core, it's about the machine, the software hardware, getting smarter on its own and making its own predictions. And so if you think about a high level, science of making machines smart. So we talk about marketing artificial intelligence, the science of making marketing smart. It's making the software we use, it gets better on its own. The primary way it does that is something called machine learning. So AI is like the umbrella term. Machine learning is the primary thing that makes predictions about outcomes using data.
And then algorithms are a function of that. So coders write algorithms, but they write algorithms so that the machines can learn, because inherently machines are dumb, right? I've heard you say that.
Yeah, an algorithm in its most basic, I mean, a recipe for cooking is an algorithm. An algorithm is just a set of instructions.
Exactly.
So yes, in that world, in a software, it's a set of instructions that tells software or machine what to do. Is an algorithm.
And then the machine learning comes in because it's picking up on human behavior right? And then it's
Correct.
basically enhancing that algorithm and then predicting what the human would do next, and then learning from millions and billions of interactions.
Correct.
Okay.
So if an email, stay with email,
Yep.
you send 100,000 emails and you want to get better
Right.
at open rates and click rates, you look at the data, analyze it, and then you try and make changes.
Right.
Machine learning looks at it in real time and is able to recommend or even write the next subject line for
Gotcha.
you. So it's all about it constantly getting better versus only when a human stops to try and make it better.
Right, or stops to analyze the metrics and go, oh,
Correct.
this subject line's working great. This, response send time is best. Okay, so now that we've got that, hopefully our audience understood that. If you don't get it, go to YouTube, look up Paul Roetzer. You'll get it then. So blow our mind. So we're marketing guys, we're HubSpot guys, we do content marketing, right? So from an AI perspective, what's down the pike? What are we looking at?
So there's three main categories of AI applications: language, vision, and prediction. Movement would be the other, but that doesn't really come into play for marketers. You're not building robots to do much.
Right.
So language is where a lot of the major innovation is happening. And what I mean by language is the understanding and generation of words,
content?
whether it's written or spoken. Yeah.
Okay.
So like a machine writing a blog post for you. The major advancements in language generation have largely occurred in the last 18 to 24 months through what's called transformers and large language models. There's a company called OpenAI that built GPT-3. So people maybe have heard GPT-3.
Yep.
It's a large language model.
That's on our list.
That is,
Yep.
So it's trained to create language. They're not the only ones working on this, though. Microsoft has been working on it for a decade. The Gmail example we talked about earlier, where it's Smart Compose, where it finishes. Gmail or Google's intention is to be able to write documents for you. Like in Google Docs, you will have paragraphs written for you the way it's currently writing sentences. There is technology we have tested and used that is designed to write entire blog posts, or at minimum creative briefs or first drafts of content. And the thing that people have to realize is, my belief is that language generation capability, so if you write anything for a living right now, which is all of us, it will follow Moore's law. So Moore's law is that the power of computer chips would double every 18 months. And that has held true for 60 years. I believe the same thing will happen with language understanding and generation, that we're on a path to where every 18 to 24 months, the ability of a machine to understand and generate language is going to double. Okay. And if you think about where that could take us in 3 to 5 years, writing is going to completely change.
Yeah. Well, I'm probably going to skip ahead a little bit, but what happens if you wake up tomorrow and it's in the wrong hand, it's in the hands of bad characters, and all of a sudden you wake up tomorrow and cigarettes are healthy, and you know what I mean? What happens then? How do you see that playing out?
I mean, so
did that blow up the internet? I'm not trying to, I think that while there's a lot of people talk about misinformation out there, it's the largest reference guide in the world. But what happens if overnight I could get 10,000 articles spun that peer reviewed that say that cigarettes are good?
Yeah, it's a major problem. It has been for years. So when OpenAI, which was founded by Elon Musk, OpenAI isn't some hack thing. It was created by Elon Musk to create general intelligence, and the former president of Y Combinator, Sam Altman. When they created GPT-2 in 2018, they didn't release the open code, which is their whole mission, was to open the code for AI so other people could build on top of it. They didn't release it because of concerns around disinformation and misinformation. So the misuse of language generation. That was GPT-2. GPT-3 is 10 times more powerful than that. And when we last looked at it, this is probably 5 months ago, there was over 300 companies that were built on top of GPT-3, meaning you could go buy a subscription to a software company using GPT-3 and you could generate ads, social media shares, content. So the proliferation of misinformation and different disinformation is already happening. There's no turning back from that. It's a race right now, specifically by Google, but Microsoft's in there too, to actually build AI to identify the disinformation and misinformation. And then you obviously have the issues with Facebook of, even if we know it's there, are we going to do anything about it? And Twitter's, there too, but Facebook gets more. And honestly, YouTube, because you can create deepfake videos the same way you can create blog posts where it looks like someone is saying something that they never said.
Yep.
And that, like, DARPA, the U.S. government, like, they can take probably, I don't know, an hour of footage of someone and learn their language and their mannerisms and everything about them. And you could build a deep fake on anybody. Take any CEO of any major company, you could build a deep fake about them in a second.
Yeah.
Like, and spread information that never came from them. So there's a massive dark side to AI. No
So
doubt.
my question for you though is that where deepfake, from what I've seen, and keep in mind that there's probably, it's the Wild West out there of probably what I haven't seen, but there seems to be a little bit of a code. If you're gonna deepfake, that you have to reference that it's a deepfake, like, as prominently as you can. Now, are there tons of bad actors out there? Probably, and sure. But I really feel like a lot of the people that are playing in that space, and I think even YouTube's trying to crack down to just kind of guarantee authenticity. So do you think that you're going to see a blog that's written, and say it's even done with noble purposes, that there'll be some sort of icon on the top right that says, hey, you know what, this is built by a robot? Do you see that happening? Do you think they'll have to distinguish themselves the way sponsored content works? Like, have you ever been to articles and it's like, this is a sponsored content, but it looks native? Yeah.
Absolutely. There will be efforts to regulate it, just like GDPR and, what they're doing out in California. Like, there's always going to be efforts to regulate what are the legitimate actors, but it's an endless race to keep up with the bad actors. Because deepfakes, like for example, early on, it was really hard to get deepfakes where the person would blink. Yeah. And so a telltale for the algorithm to look for a deepfake was, does the person blink? Yeah. And so they would find nuances within the deepfake technology and use AI to identify other AI. Mm-hmm. But it's a constant race. Yeah. And the tech is getting so good that the government in particular, but then these major platforms are trying to continually build AI better than the bad actors build it. And that race isn't going to stop. And I mean, honestly, like, this stuff, like, if you want to blow your mind, like, go read the Pentagon's brain. This isn't new stuff. Like, in the Pentagon's brain, they tell the story of how DARPA has been trying to replicate the human brain for like 30 years. And the stuff the government has been working on will trickle down into, like, commercialization a decade later. I mean, go look at what Elon Musk's doing with Neuralink. Yeah. Like, they're hiring a head of clinical trials to embed a mesh into your brain to download your thoughts. Like, this is real stuff. Like, people are working on, and that tech was being worked on by DARPA like 15 years ago. So there's stuff that, like, you'll just, like, lose your mind if you go down that rabbit hole.
I've seen a couple Netflix series like that.
I know, it's like Black Mirror.
Yeah, Westworld is like inspired by what's possible.
Yeah.
It's not all, like, right now you could do it, but there isn't a storyline in there that isn't based in some theoretical thing or something that is being worked on in labs.
You do Black Mirror as well? Yeah.
I won't watch it because I know
how true it is.
Too much to, like, sleep at night if I watch the stuff. But
it's compelling. Yeah. It's
where do you think all of this plays in with? So if we go on the assumption that AI is a function of machines getting smarter based on human experience, right? Where does all this play in with like privacy, like iPhone privacy, right? So if there's a push, like, from whatever world to basically say, hey, we want to protect, we want to shield people from, sharing what they're doing. Like, how does that slow down the AI engine, or is the AI engine just going to find a different way around?
Yeah, it certainly can. I mean, machine learning AI, it needs data to be trained,
right.
Whether it's human labeling of data. So, like, give me 1,000 photos and I tell you what's in them, and that teaches the machine what's in those photos. Or if it's just constantly taking, like in lead scoring, like, you're just constantly taking in new data about what a lead looks like and who converts, so you can constantly improve the scoring model. You need data to create AI, basically.
Yeah.
But there's ways around it. You can build models that just run. Like, look at how AlphaGo won, beat the world champion in Go. Like, you know, you can go watch AlphaGo, the documentary, and it learned by watching human Go players, but it learned by playing itself millions of times.
Gotcha.
And so you can create these like worlds where the AI actually trains against itself.
Okay.
But the issue with privacy is the whole benefit of AI to the consumer is personalization and convenience. And so there is always this like, well, do I want targeted ads? Not really, but I don't want just
junk
ads that have nothing to do with me. It's like, fine, you can have my data. Just like, I'd rather see ads that are relevant than ads that aren't.
Yeah.
So there's always this push, and unfortunately, the younger generation, their sensitivity to privacy is like just gone. Like just put anything out there.
Yep.
So I don't see it being a stumbling block.
Yeah. It is funny though, because you know, Apple champions this. I'll go into this one small story. It's just that on everybody else's stuff, they're saying, do you want to be tracked? And when you go into the App Store, if you get a new phone, you restore your phone, when their pop-up comes up about their App Store, it says, do you want personalized ads? It's like about everybody else. Do you want to be tracked? And them, it's personalized.
That's called spin.
That's called spin if I've ever seen it. But my mother-in-law, who's the authority on all things, it's just like, I'm so excited about the privacy type stuff. And I'm like, well, here's the deal. People literally stood in lines in the freezing cold around the building. All right? Because they wanted the most intuitive phone possible. When you take the privacy off, you don't realize it, but you're taking a lot of the intuitive things about your phone away. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm looking for a new washing machine, like you just said a minute ago, I don't want to be seeing ads about lawnmowers. Now, you know what I mean? Like, we don't want to have our privacy invaded, but we also want it to be intuitive. And what they're doing is saying, oh, privacy, but what the average person that knows what it's talking about is like, you know what? You're losing intuition of the phone. It's just a faster box now. You know? I mean, yeah, so that was just my argument.
A great example of it is like Amazon. Like, people don't stop and think about all the data Amazon has on us. Like, years ago, why did they buy Whole Foods? Well, it's because they already know everything you do online with your buying. They want to know your offline too. Yeah. And they're going to give you 10% off everything you buy offline, because now they can build a more holistic picture of you. And they're your Ring devices, so they know who's at your front door. The Alexa devices everywhere in your car, and like, Amazon knows everything. And do you trust Amazon? I don't necessarily trust them. Yeah. But like, so then you get into this like, well, Google also knows everything, and Apple knows everything, and maybe if I allow Facebook, they know everything, and you start getting this like, who do I actually trust with this data? Yeah. And there's no perfect answers, but I don't think most consumers even process how much information
I don't think they do
these
either.
Platforms have.
One of the things I saw in a keynote you gave a couple years ago is you quoted a Gartner article talking about like, $4 trillion in like AI derived business. Now that was a couple years ago. So like, when you look back at that and you go, all right, that was a couple years ago, and here it is. Like, did that come to fruition, or did we surpass that? Because I think there's this. I think you also talk about how like the rate of speed is just it's cruising. Like, we're going super fast. Yeah, we're straight up. Did we get to that like $4 trillion, or did we just blow it away?
So the one I usually will cite is the McKinsey Global Institute, and theirs is from 2018, and it was up to $6 trillion in annual impact. We're not there yet, but they didn't put a year on it.
Oh, okay.
I think they were intentional about that. There are other ones where Gartner was like, oh, by 2022 it'll be $4 trillion.
Yeah, that's
whatever.
the one I saw.
And the thing I always say is like, nobody actually knows, but what they all agree on, whether it's Deloitte or PwC or Gartner, it's trillions, in annual impact. Right. And what they mean by that is unlocking value. And like, a real practical example is if you're an airline and you sell $1 billion a year in tickets, and you can go to $1.5 billion because you can personalize pricing based on intent, based on lookalikes, because all this data you collect. And each time you sell a ticket, maybe you increase the yield by like 5% or whatever that number is. You're unlocking $500 million in value. Like, that's what they're saying is like, through pricing, through predicting next purchasing, through budget allocation, you're optimizing spend and optimizing price. and those things let you unlock value you wouldn't have created
Right.
otherwise.
So like by not tapping into AI, you're here, but by unlocking the benefits of AI, you're able to increase your margin and your value.
Right, either by reduction in
Right.
workforce, increase in productivity,
Or
increase in pricing yield,
just-
like all these outcomes.
Or just speaking to the customer like when they actually want it or need it or in their terms. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, Todd and I were talking about we're big cycling guys, and when Lance Armstrong got busted for PEDs, like the thing that was very obvious, like they were attacking his morality, but like the thing that was pretty obvious to cyclists were just like, if everyone's doing it and he's not doing it, there's no way he keeps pace and there's no way he's a champion. You know what I mean? And I think that with all of the doom and gloom that we're talking about here, right? About like, not doom and gloom, sorry, it's not all doom and gloom. I'm saying, all the things that could go wrong, it's going to be just like that. In other words, businesses are going to have to, implement AI or they won't be here. Is that do you believe that?
Yeah, it's it's an arms race.
Yeah.
So it's like I always equate it to like the atomic weapons, the proliferation of nuclear weapons and things like that. The U.S. government works on things that the average consumer doesn't want to know they work on. Like they're working on some crazy dark stuff.
Yeah.
But the premise is, if we don't, they will. So like if we're not working on these things, we know that Russia and China, all these other governments are going to be working on them. So you have to build them. Otherwise, you're going to be at a disadvantage. And so, yes, the same holds true with AI. It's like people are racing forward with the development of AI without necessarily knowing the true ramifications if they achieve the ultimate outcome of general intelligence.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like we'll figure it out when we get there, but the benefits we think are greater than not. But either way, they might do it before we do, and we got to get there first.
And I get some of the wisdom in that. I think one of the things that so this might sound like I'm flexing here, but me and the guy who helped me co-write my book is we wrote an article that we're trying to post to TechCrunch, and we were quoting literally Jeffrey Goldblum from Jurassic Park, and he has this awesome line where he says, "You were so anxious to find out if you could that you never stopped a moment to figure out whether you should." You know what I mean? And like my nervousness about the metaverse is that we have a portion of the population that'll be radically unemployable, and then you'll have a metaverse that, if done correctly, will feel so seamless and indistinguishable from real life, where I think that a large portion of the population would rather just live there. And it's like
I hope not.
I know.
It's like Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Like I'm all for like the creation and the value of the metaverse, but man, I fear it for society.
Me too.
Like it's I'm not in any race to see the metaverse come into like this Ready Player One world because I think it's the human side of what those books deal with is not far from what would happen if people could just escape reality all the time. And I worried about this with augmented and virtual reality. Like I was at a talk in 2016 where they had like the foremost experts on augmented virtual reality. And even at that time, there were no studies going on at what age kids could differentiate reality from virtual reality. Like if you put a headset on a kid when he's 6 and he has this experience, when he's 30, is he even going to be able to differentiate whether that actually happened or not? Wow. They don't have an answer to that. Yeah. And so like they have no idea what the human mind in those developmental years will do. So I haven't studied the metaverse a ton, just enough to know that
you're scared of
I
it.
fear it.
I think that the full virtual world is going to be slower to take than you think. I still think they don't have that. I think the hardware is still the problem. Like, for example, like one of the things that was promising to me, and we wrote in the article, is how 3D TVs came and went so quickly because people didn't feel like living in the technology. They wanted to dip their foot in the technology, but they didn't want to live in them. I think AR might be different because I think a company like Oakley is going to make them fashionable and cool, and you wouldn't even know that you have them on. And then AR will be the gateway drug to full VR. If I'm just getting my vocab correctly, but that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think there's a there's a logical path to AR being a functional tool for a portion of society. Like, I mean, it's obviously a lot of people have tried. I think Apple is quietly working on something significant with AR. I could see that having more function. I know there's a land grab right now to like get products patented for the metaverse and buy real estate, and like do all these stuff. And I feel right now like we're Second Life all over again, where there's just like this mad buzz about something that just rename it and all of a sudden it becomes like the hot thing and Facebook cares about it. And like, I just don't know how real that, and even Facebook's like, yeah, it might be like 10 years away. Like, so I think enough major platforms are working on whatever the metaverse is, because I'm not even sure people really know what the metaverse is. It's very squishy right now of like what exactly we're talking. It's kind of like Web3 to me. It's like, I don't know. I mean, it's a term we've given something that no one understands, basically.
Hey, Chris, can we talk about marketing for a minute?
Yeah, let's do it.
This has been really.
What have we been talking about?
No I don't know. I think we've been talking about the future of the uncertainty. So one of the things that, you know, Chris basically built his business, and I'm sure you probably did too, like building websites, right? And then there was this genesis of like website builders. So any Joe Schmo could go build a website, use like something like a Wix tool, right? And then, you know, a couple years ago, they weren't awesome. And then recently, they're like pretty good. Like you don't have to know HTML. You don't have to really be creative. Like you can build a pretty good looking website. So what we're trying to think about, and maybe you could help us understand, is, so if website makes this big jump in the last couple of years, what about content? Like, so let's just take, for instance, you have like a Joe Plumber. He built his own website pretty easily, does it pretty cheaply, actually, gets it hosted for $100 a year, you know, built and, you know, hosted. Will, in some capacity, will this Joe the Plumber, will he be able to like AI generate his own blogs? Like is that going to be like, is that the future?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think it's very far off.
You don't think that's far off?
Like, no.
Okay.
Not at all. I mean, we do it now. We've written blog posts, like we have a blog post like how I wrote a 650 word blog post in 5 minutes. Like, it's doable. I think that the language generation technology within the next 3 to 5 years will be so good that will be in the verticalization of those applications.
Wow.
Like, it's just going to be like websites 10 years ago where it's like, all right, like I'll specialize in building websites for plumbers.
Right.
It's like, all right, I'll create an inventory of 500 articles about plumbing. I'll use a machine to generate them, and then I'll just sell stock content. I'll like personalize it to them or whatever. Like, I really don't think that's a far off idea at all. Okay. I wouldn't be surprised if people were actively working on that.
That makes sense.
You might know this name, and I'm going to butcher it. There's a quote from Naval Ravikant. Do you know how to pronounce his name? You know that name? Anyhow. So he's the chairman and former CEO of AngelList. So he says, creativity is the last frontier. So I do believe that automation over a long period of time will replace every non-creative job. But that's great news. That means that all of our basic needs are taken care of. And what remains for us is to be creative, which is really what every human wants.
It's a very Silicon Valley analysis of the future, I would say. And I don't say that negatively. I say that it tends to be a very bleeding edge analysis of where it could go. So we have an entire chapter dedicated to this idea of like creativity, or a big section of the chapter in our upcoming book. And it's something we've written about and have talked about. But I do believe that creativity will be assisted by machines. It already is. Like, inspiration can come from them. There's a debate to solve for, can a machine be creative? You actually have to drill into like, what is creativity? And the problem there is, go search for define creativity, and what you're going to find is Merriam-Webster may have a different definition than somebody else. And it's like, is it an original idea? So human creativity is a sum of our experiences and knowledge and feelings and emotions going in to create something. So writing a song, creating a poem, writing a story. Like everything about our humanity goes into that story. However, you could give a machine all the Harry Potter novels, and it can learn the writing style of it. And in theory, it can actually generate its own Harry Potter novel. Or it can write a song. If it's been trained on 1,000 hip hop songs, it could write a song, a hip hop song. Like, it's possible. Now, the question becomes like, well, was that creative or was it just math? Did it just apply hardcore math to recognize patterns and output something that followed those patterns? So the answer is kind of like yes and no. It's just like, well, how do you define creativity? If you define math and analysis and pattern recognition, creating an output of a song as creativity, then the machine can be creative.
Well,
my belief is like strategy. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, don't you think that like the unique, like defining character of creativity is uniqueness? So like even though there's been all these words or all these songs sung, but like the system generates something that's like unique. It hasn't been created before.
Yeah.
That's kind of what makes me, like when I think about creativity, is that it's just different from what's been produced in the past. It's creative.
So if the creativity is the fuel, the AI becomes more creative because the origin of the AI was creative. In other words, it's not like my mom, no offense to my mom, is going to get the same outcome as John Lennon, because John Lennon put in the special sauce to get the AI moving. Does that make sense? So I think what he's saying about it'll always come down to creativity is it's what kind of people do you have in your organization that can put the most creative juice into the machine?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a topic you could spend hours on. The thing I come back to, and again, I don't actually fall really solidly on. I believe strategy, empathy, and creativity will remain uniquely human, largely. But if you search for Move 37 AlphaGo on Google, what you'll find is the story of this AlphaGo match I mentioned earlier from 2016, where they beat Lee Sedol, the world champion at Go, which is infinitely more complex than chess. And Move 37 was a move where they thought the machine broke. The machine made a move that no human Go player would ever conceive of. And at the time, the people that were the narrators, the commentators, were like, oh my gosh, I think it just glitched. The people who built AlphaGo were in the control room thinking AlphaGo just glitched. What they realized was AlphaGo made a move. There was a 1 in 10,000 chance a human would make, is what AlphaGo calculated, and it made the move anyway. And after the fact, Lee Sedol, who was completely defeated as a human, like you could just see everything come out of him, he actually said it was a beautiful move. It was creative, that the machine did something original. And again, it was just math, but like who defines creativity is really what it comes down to. Yeah. And I think the lines will continue to blur. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that like a machine will win a Nobel Prize. It's not far off, or share a Nobel Prize. A Pulitzer will be one human machine Pulitzer. It will be shared with an AI. Like it's the human machine, and there's no escaping that all things, strategy, critic, will be human machine.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy.
And sad, but cool, but sad too. You know what I mean?
I think the sooner you just accept it, the less sad it becomes. Yeah. Like it's
yeah. Well, I mean,
all I keep thinking about is our poor children.
I know it's weird.
You know, you figure like what we've endured in the last 30, 40 years, and it's just like these kids. Like you were saying earlier, Paul, about like the difference between like what's actually real anymore. Like at least we've got our years of what reality is and what reality is not to lean on. That they're just inundated right now.
I'm doing a talk next month on the psychology of social media for kids. Yeah. It's for parents is actually the session, but I'm doing it with a psychologist. And that's what we're trying to do is like, I'm there to explain how the algorithms and the AI work within social media platforms. He's there to say what the human mind processes and how it impacts us. And it's a frontier like I haven't really explored yet, but I'm very intrigued because, again, I have young kids and it's like, what is their future look like?
And did you see The Social Dilemma? Yeah, that's probably a good starting point for that.
It's pretty accurate. Yeah. The Great Hack is another one, which is the story of Cambridge Analytica. Like kind of a pivot point within.
I think if you didn't get a chance, Tristan Harris, the guy who made The Social Dilemma, and Daniel, I can't even pronounce his last name, was on Joe Rogan, And it was probably the best. Like, I'm a Joe Rogan guy. I think it's the best episode
Yeah.
that he's ever done. And that's literally one of the things I was going to quote to you right now. And so Tristan Harris recently quoted E.O. Wilson, who's like a bio-engineer, but ethics guy, whatever it is saying that the fundamental human problem is we have Paleolithic brains, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. So let me kind of unpack that. What I mean by that is that we've got people that are easily swayed. You've got government where the average person who's turning the dials is 70 years old and doesn't know how to use an iPhone, and godlike power. All right. And so the question that he has is like, how do you wield the power of gods, like technology, with the love and prudence and wisdom of gods, which is essentially talking about how tech and AI, how do you responsibly and more and safely keep it from swallowing us whole? That's the...
It is the great question of our generation. Yeah. And unfortunately, I don't think anybody has the answers because unlike the atomic race that we touched on earlier, you knew who the players were. You knew where the weapons were being created. You knew how much uranium was needed. Like, you could monitor the development. You can't monitor the development of AI because general intelligence can spring up out of somebody's basement. Yep. So you know the major players are working on it. You know the major corporations are working on it. But any student out of MIT, Stanford, University of Toronto, wherever it comes from, you can build this stuff in places that aren't being monitored. And if the person who builds it first, that gets to AGI first, isn't a controlled environment, we got problems.
Yeah, certainly.
So yeah, there's no answer to that theoretical question he's posing or like philosophical question. You just hope enough people that understand the problem and care about it are working on how to protect it.
Yeah, and that's the call that Tristan says. Is the call I put in the blog article I was telling you about. Is that, so this is kind of the joke that I sort of say. It's like, do you know when the seatbelt was invented? It's like 1959. Do you know when it became a law that it should be in a car? 1968. So it took 9 years to think, hey, you know what? It'd probably be safe for society to be strapped in their car, right? Like 8 years in the technology world, you know what I mean? It just doesn't even make any logical sense.
It's like 1,000 years.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can't rely on guardrails coming from tech. I mean, just look at, like, if you read Genius Makers by Cade Metz, it's a great insight into this world. But like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk have very, very differing opinions around general intelligence and its feasibility. To the point where he tells this inside story of Mark Zuckerberg having Elon Musk over for dinner to try and get him to stop talking about how bad AGI is going to be.
Yeah.
So when you just look at the major players, they can't even come to agreement that we really need to protect humanity from this thing because they don't necessarily see the downside to it, or at least they won't publicly talk about the downside.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So that's sort of like the Manhattan Project. Have you heard about the movie Don't Look Up?
Yeah, I watched it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to go into where it was trying to go with climate change or even COVID or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But I do know that, like, if a meteor was heading to Earth, 50% of the country would probably find a way to either say it's a good thing or try to find a profit in the last minute or spin it. And so, like, that's my fear about this is that, let's say the three of us all agreed and we were totally scared and we wanted to say it from the rooftops. I think that 50% of the audience is going to be like a Mark Zuckerberg and be like, nah, don't worry about that. I'm like, well, if you don't worry about it, it could be too late.
Yeah, I mean, without getting political, America, the world has moved far left and right. There is no center anymore. Correct. There's no truth. And so, it's, I mean, Don't Look Up is like, obviously meant to be like to an extreme, but I don't think you're wrong. Like, you can convince half the population one thing and half the population of the other thing, no matter what side you're on.
Yeah, it's
definitely.
It's a weird world we're living in, and it's
certainly.
And Todd and I were talking about, it's not a bullet coming at us; it's a freight train. You know what I mean? No.
Yeah, but I will say, to lighten it for a moment,
please.
The internet this was the internet. Like, go back to 93, 94, 95. You could sit down and be like, oh my God, like, think about all the ways the internet could go wrong, and this dark web thing could emerge, and people could spread misinformation. And like, would you still create the internet, the consumer internet? You could, because you'd sit there and be like, but think of all the good that will come.
I can't live without it.
Growth of the economy and the communications and all these things that'll emerge. And that's where we are, I believe, with AI. Okay. There will absolutely be dark sides to it, things that we don't even want to talk about. But there's going to be such amazing things that can come from it. And there's always going to be good actors and bad actors, and you're going to have to find a balance. And that's how I kind of look at the future. It's like, it's coming. This isn't a debate about whether or not we're going to have this intelligence. It's going to be here. It's here already. Let's just accept it and have as many people as possible focused on AI for good, responsible AI, so that those people can outnumber the bad actors.
Right. I love it. Well, thank you so much for lightening the mood, because I was feeling the weight of this conversation.
Exactly. But let me just say one more comment about that, though. And this is one of the things that I think is interesting, though, is that, like, I heard this analogy. It's like when everybody was using an abacus and a calculator came out, people never said, oh my gosh, there won't be accountants anymore. You know? Right. And in the marketing world, right, you ran an agency, I ran an agency. Client pays us $10,000 a month. The limiting factor, other than how you talk about value-based pricing, but even with value-based pricing, if you're going to give me $10,000, it's going to come down to a limited amount of time of what I can do in a month for you to do 10,000, right? What's interesting, though, is that if I could solve big parts of the equation through AI, it doesn't mean that my job's gone. It means that I'm going to be able to do the things above and beyond that your contract didn't allow for, because I had to spend so much time making the donuts. I had so much time doing the things that AI is solving. And so I don't really fear, as long as you can stay nimble as an agency and ride the wave, I believe we're going to go one step higher on the ladder. I don't know what that means, but I do know that, like, it's not going to be here like, oh my gosh, it's January 1st and January 15th, no marketers have jobs. It's not going to hit us like a freight train. I think if you adopt it just the way an accountant would adopt a calculator, it'll be a tool for good if used correctly. Sorry if I'm pontificating here, but that's what I believe.
No, I agree. I think you just have to assume this is true. Like, this is where we're going, and the sooner you embrace it and understand what AI is actually capable of doing, the sooner you can apply it to your business and your clients' businesses or your career for good and free you up to do. I mean, my chief growth officer just put something on LinkedIn yesterday, said, like, hey, I saved about 3 hours using copy.ai to write some content last week. And I spent those 3 hours instead personally reaching out and connecting on LinkedIn with a couple hundred people that had attended our recent Intro to AI for Marketers live class. So it's like she did personal outreach and relationship building instead of doing a thing that the machine was good at. That is the equation. It's transferring time to higher value human things, which is what you were saying.
Yeah, you said it better. But
yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, and you did all that without pontificating. So we wanted to just sort of, first off, thank you so much for being on the show. To our audience, absolutely. I know it was heavy. I know we sort of painted this dark picture, but thank you, Paul, for lightening it and just sort of reminding us that, you know, technology is part of who we are. It's part of what we do, and it's going to be good and bad. And it's just up to, hopefully there's a greater good out there as we move forward. So we're going to close with this, and just help us real quick. What's next for you? I think you touched on a new book coming out as well. Can you talk about that for a few minutes?
Yeah, we have Marketing, Artificial Intelligence, AI Business, or AI Marketing in the Future of Business is the title. It comes out in June.
June, okay, great.
And then we have our Marketing AI Conference, which will be back in person.
Wow, congratulations.
God willing, in August in Cleveland.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's big
That's
thing.
awesome. I just have one last question for you, too. And, you know, I'm trying to ask this of more and more people because I'm starting to get on the downhill, or the final 9 of my career is, with all that you've kind of accomplished with the businesses, with the technology, with all the stuff like that, what do you think, if you could, at the end of the game, what do you think you want your legacy to be? Sorry if that's a very deep question, but.
I mean, a lot of the AI stuff came down to my kids. Like, I looked ahead. I started working on AI like 10 years ago, right around when I had my daughter. And I saw the future being very different, and I wanted to figure it out. I wanted to get there first, and so that it could be used in as good a way as possible. So I see what we're doing at the Institute as a foot in the door, sort of a seat at the table to the future of AI and society, in a way. And so by having a conference, by having a podcast, by doing these things, we get to talk to the smartest people in the world, the people who are the true market makers. Men on the AI side.
I'm blushing. Very, very nice of you.
You want to say that again?
You can clip that and use that in your trailer. Like our keynotes for our conference last year were Karen Howe from MIT Tech Review and Cade Metz from the New York Times and the author of Genius Makers. Like, to spend an hour with each of them, and they are absolutely connected to the most innovative things happening in AI. And Karen with the responsible AI side, and Cade had the inside story of everything that happened last decade. He was sourced to the people that were creating the change. So to spend an hour with each of them and to hear their takes on where we are, I would never have that without what we're building. And so I feel like it's giving us a chance to truly understand what's going on so that we can figure out the next move.
Great.
And that's kind of what I'm doing, is I'm just playing a long game of, like, if we can be with the right people, get the right information, we can figure out the greatest impact we can have on the application of AI to society.
Well,
that's it.
Well, Paul, I'm a fan.
all.
Yeah, this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Yeah, I'd love to have you back next year when we can have it in the metaverse, and
Let's do
Todd
it.
will be a giraffe and I will be whatever kooky stuff they're cooking up in there. Yeah, but thank you so much. You're a legend, and thank you. We're a huge fan of what you're doing. To our subscribers and the people, if you're watching the show for the first time, Digital Marketing Masterclass is dedicated to having people like Paul on the show that are going to talk about the most innovative, cutting edge, and most practical ways to transform your business and your marketing. So thank you very much. Please subscribe, click on the notification, and we will see you next time. Thank you for watching this video. What I wanted to do now is share something with you that we believe is very special. We call it the Faratech Unique Process. What you'll see on this page is our entire roadmap that we've built over the last 21 years. We've implemented this process for nearly all of our inbound marketing clients. And we believe that if you implement some of these strategies into your own marketing, you're going to have tremendous results. We developed this page to not only be in video format, but also in text and chapter format as well. Now, when it's done effectively, this process is going to help your organization systematically generate leads, nurture leads into clients, and then convert those clients into raving fans of your products and services, and also your mission and value. If you have any questions or comments about anything that you've read or seen in the previous video, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us and we'll have one of our specialists walk through this with you step by step. You can do that by reaching out to us at info@faratech.com. So once again, the domain to find our unique process is www.faratechuniqueprocess.com. Thank you.